All right, here we go. All right, thank you so much, Ben, for
Yeah.
reminding me to record. All right, so keep your cameras on, turn them off, whatever you're feeling comfortable with. This is going to be interactive. This is something that I'm hoping to answer questions throughout. Maybe we'll have like a couple pauses on questions, but in general, we'll just kind of go through this. I'll talk through everything I know. I'll answer questions as we go through. I do heck, I'll just go ahead and I have it all written in the presentation. So let me start off with this. All right, here we go. So a forecast enables, hold on, let me turn my commands off so I can see the whole thing. Floating controls. There we go. Okay. A forecast enables you to think about your business and set realistic goals. If you guys have seen me speak publicly, which a lot of people here have, you hear me talk about this all the time, about how a lot of small business owners don't build forecasts and they can't predict what's going to happen in their business. But not only does it help you predict it, it also helps you think about it, because in order to predict the future, you have to think about your business. And when you build a forecast, you have to think about what you're going to do throughout the entire year to grow the business, to hit your goals. And in general, when we're looking at goals, when we're looking at your OKRs, your KPIs, depending upon if you're using something like Measure What Matters or Traction or some other business operating system, when you're setting those goals, so often there's no forecast behind it. And if you don't have the forecast behind it, you can't see what are reasonable goals and what are not reasonable goals. A really good example of this is personally, I've done this where I take a look and I'm like, what was it? There was a company I launched called MedRev, and I thought I was going to sell like 400 physicians. And after I got into building the forecast on it, I was like, how about more like 75? Because when we actually start looking at the cost of acquisition per physician, I was like, I'm going to have to raise so much money to hit 400. It's not really feasible, and it doesn't make business sense. So when I started looking at the raise, I was just like if I'm looking at a $2 million valuation to start, I would have to raise like $2 million to like hit that number at my cost of acquisition per physician. And so I was like, okay, that's not going to work. We're going to take it down to a quarter of that to start off, and then we're going to do raise one and then a raise two, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I wouldn't have known that had I not really put together the forecast. And I'm actually going to walk you guys through a very similar example during this talk today. All right. Oops. All right. So for me, I think everybody here knows me. I'm a former private equity CEO. I've run agencies for over 20 years. I've founded about 10 businesses in the last 25 years. I've sold 2 businesses to billion-dollar organizations. I'm founder and coach at Ascendance.coach, and I'm also the CEO at the SaaS consultancy JHMG. All right. When I started in private equity, I had been running agencies for like 20 years. And I was like, oh yeah, I got this. No problem. I've done this stuff for 20 years, for decades. I know this stuff inside and out. And I got to my first board meeting and I looked like a freaking idiot. I looked like a moron in front of those people. Actually, I was pretty smart. I kept my mouth shut for the most part, but I felt like a moron because they wanted me to go into the models and talk about budgets versus actuals. They wanted to talk about like why I predicted something was one way. And by the way, this was before I actually predicted why the model predicted something was going to be one way, and then how it happened another way. I had no idea what they were talking about, because in small businesses, we don't really use models that much. We don't use that much financial forecasting. We kind of play things by ear in a lot of ways, and we look at what's right in front of us. And this is actually what I think is one of the downfalls of small business, because small business leaders, small business owners very often are looking at what's right in front of them, not what's 3 steps or 10 steps ahead. And so by having a model and by learning the stuff that we're going to talk about today, you're going to see they're going to give you the tools to think 10 steps ahead and to see the financial implications of thinking 10 steps ahead. Any questions on that so far? Perfect. All right. So today's goal: teach you what you need to know to use a forecast and then have somebody else build it. today's goal is not to teach you how to do this stuff. It's to teach you enough to be dangerous and then give you somebody else who's going to be able to do it for you. And actually, we've got Rick on the call from Concero, who the big model that I'm going to show today was a model that was modified. Oh, we got RJ coming in. All right, excellent. Hold on, we're going to take a real quick break and say hey to RJ. Is he in yet? Where's he at? All right. I can't see him yet. Hey, RJ, how's it going, man? His mic's probably not on yet. He'll get in when he gets in. Okay.
I'm here. Sorry, it took me 10 minutes to log in here.
Everything okay on the login process? Or was it
Eventbrite is a little bit of a pain in the butt.
It is a pain in the butt. It really is, because it lists 2 times. It lists Eastern Standard Time and Eastern Daylight Time, and it confused the piss out of me because I was like, did we set it for 11 or for 12? And yeah, it was. I'm not going to use Eventbrite next time. So
well, I have two Eventbrite accounts. My primary one isn't the address that I signed up with, so that was an issue.
Gotcha.
Anyway, good to see you, man.
And good to see you as well. All right, so you missed the beginning about how I really screwed up when I got into private equity, RJ. But I think you and I talked about that already at some point in the past. All right, so the goal is not for you guys to be able to build this stuff from scratch, although it's really helpful to know what's going on. The goal is to be able to give this to a model builder. And we got Rick from Concero. We also have Felipe on as well, who is also a model builder. And we'll talk about both those guys in a few minutes. All right. So by the end of the talk, you're going to understand the parts of a forecast. You're going to know how to build different scenarios in your businesses. You're going to build incentivization systems for your teams, and you're going to have the system for building forecasts. Like I said, you won't have to do it, but you'll know what needs to get done. And then a few quick disclaimers. I'm a CEO who uses these tools. I don't really build them myself. I edit them, I modify them, I play around with them, I add things. I rarely build this stuff from scratch. So if you start asking questions about how does that formula work, what I'm going to do is tell you the best tool I know for building formulas is ChatGPT. If you explain exactly what you want, it'll build your formulas perfectly for you. I'm not a CPA, I'm not a CFO, I'm not an analyst. I don't know all the formulas. I can't help you with the complex ones, but ChatGPT can. All right. And then real quick, before we get started, I just want to say real quick, this is my shameless, shameless post for my businesses, JHMG, SaaS Consulting, Ascendance Executive Coaching, and Ramp Team Performance Management. At the end, anybody who wants access to Ramp, I know Niels, you already use it. And anybody else who wants access, you can get free forever access. Just message me, let me know you want it, and I'll get you access. We're still in a pre-beta stage on it. All right. Go ahead and click on this so you can get the tools right now to get in. So I'm gonna actually put it into the thing for you real quick. And put it into the chat so everybody's got it. There you go. It's going to take you here. It's a really simple form, and it takes you directly to the files. All right, I'm going to give you guys like 30 seconds on that, and then we'll keep going. Cool. I see Dominic nodding his head. Anybody struggling with it? Everybody good? Cool. Rick, you good? Excellent. All right, cool. All right, and then I actually had one final disclaimer that I forgot to add here. You know, sometimes when you underestimate how much knowledge you have about something, and then you start to explain it to somebody, and you're like, oh, you know what? You need all this background knowledge to explain all this stuff. When I was prepping for this, I I just didn't realize how much stuff I knew about it. And so I started putting all these documents together and I was like, oh no, I got to like write a book on this to explain all of this stuff. So I didn't actually get all the documents done that I wanted to get done. So I'm going to send that out to you guys afterwards after I complete it. But I got like 40 pages into a document and I was like, I can't, there's no way I can finish this by the time I do this webinar. So, so you'll get like a book from me afterwards at some point. All right. Predicting the future. Goal setting, looking backwards. So the forecast, as we talked about, is the prediction of where you're going. The goals, as you guys have heard me speak about multiple times, most of the people here have heard me speak about multiple times, are what you're doing right now. And the scorecard lets you look back into the past. And today we're looking at the forecast. And then also, for those of you who are on EOS or Measure What Matters, OKRs, that kind of thing. The problem that I see with these systems most of the time is that they don't include forecasting. So I'm hoping to bring this puzzle together for you guys. If you're running your business on EOS, I want to put in place that forecasting piece for you so that you can make better goals for yourself. All right, now let's get into the meat of it. Types of forecasts. We've got investment models and operational models. I'm sure that there are other kinds of models out there as well, but for the most part, you can kind of group them into these two major things. The investment model is something that looks like this. This is a super, super, super basic one. But year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5, it's like, how much money am I going to make over time? If you're an investor, you want to look at something like this and say like, okay, like 10 years down, what's my IRR? What's, how much money have I made? What's my ROI, et cetera, et cetera. And this is a great model if you're looking to invest in something. But what happens if you're running the business and you can't make payroll in month 3? This model is useless because it doesn't tell you how much what's the ups and downs of the business over time. So what we want is an operational model. This is a model that'll break down your business either week by week or month by month. And it depends on the size of the business and how complex you want things to be and the state of the business as to how deep you want to build that model, whether you want to go week to week, you want to go month to month. When I've done turnaround work, I always want a week to week because I want to know, do I dip into the red at any point? So if you're right on the edge, I'm always looking at like a 13-week cash flow statement. So I can see like how far out, what does it look like 13 weeks out? Because that's a reasonable amount to predict in a business like that. And I can see like, do I go negative at any time? Do I need to raise more money? Do I need to not pay somebody? In a lot of cases, when you're doing turnaround work, you're managing cash. You're trying to figure out who can I not pay this week so that I can get by for next week. And if you don't know what next week looks like, you don't know who you're going to pay and who you're not going to pay and how much money you've got, et cetera, et cetera. This is also super helpful for a bootstrap startup. It's also super helpful for just generally a lot of small businesses. That said, for the most part in my businesses, I do things month to month, not week to week. I only do things week to week when I really, really need to. Any questions on that so far? Sorry, there was a squirrel at my window. All right, any questions so far? Cool. All right. Financial foresight makes you a realist. I talked about this at the very beginning, that when you have a forecast, you can make real decisions based on real numbers. You can have realistic growth expectations. You can see failures before they happen. This is super important because a lot of times, especially when you're first getting started, you're spending a bunch of money on, especially like in a SaaS, you're spending a bunch of money to bring in new customers, but you haven't hit your CAC payback time. Like you're going underwater with the knowledge you're going to be above water, but you got to know how much you're going under so you don't spend too much money before you start making money. So, just to clarify that, let's say you're spending $10,000 per month in ad spend and your one customer costs you $1,000 but you know that in the second year, you're going to make $5,000 for each one of those customers. In the first year though, you're still going to be underwater for X amount of time. And so you got to know how much money you can spend before you start making money. That's what I mean by CAC payback time. So when you have financial foresight, it also gives you the perspective of an investor. We're all investors in our businesses, whether we think so or not. And looking at the numbers all the time really makes you think like an investor. And then finally, it helps you create a plan that actually works, and you can answer the hard questions. And when I talk about the hard questions, real quick, how many people here have ever had to do a round of layoffs? All right, we got a lot of people. Yeah, so when you're looking at a round of layoffs, when you have a forecast, you can much more clearly understand who should go, who shouldn't go. Obviously, there's a lot of hard skill and soft skill kinds of questions and attitude questions and all sorts of other things, depending upon the size of the business. But the bigger the business, the more reliant you are on the forecasting rather than the feeling. Rather than, like, you know, if you got 10 people and you got to lay off 3 of them, you pretty well know who they are. If you got 10,000 people and you got to lay off a third of them, you've never met most of these people. And so you got to do it on the numbers. In fact, in a lot of ways, like, I think about this like, I don't know if any of you guys are pilots, but if you think about flying big planes, they make you fly on your instruments alone. That's kind of equivalent to using a forecast to run a business. All right. Once again, if you guys see me talk, you've seen this over and over. These are the parts you're generally going to have: the P&L, revenues, people costs, hiring plan, infrastructure costs, and other costs. So this is super, 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 super basic. And what we're gonna do today is we're gonna go from the super basic into the much more advanced, and then I'm gonna explain the different parts of those, and then I'm gonna break down how those things work, and we'll see if we got enough time in an hour. Okay. So a basic forecast has got just the basic stuff: summary, costs, revenues, headcount planner, basic assumptions. So really, it's your costs and your revenues, and then headcount planning, sometimes for sales, sometimes for other areas, and then basic or mediocre kind of assumptions. In a complex forecast, you're going to have all sorts of other things. The specific things that I look at in this are the unit economics. Like, in a more advanced forecast, you're really looking a lot at your unit economics, your category and department P&Ls, your cash flow. I don't really look at the balance sheet that much in my more, I don't look at it that much. But then I do look a lot at payroll and my revenue. Where's my revenue composition? I missed. Oh yeah, it's, you know what? I didn't put it in here. And then revenue. All right. You know, I'm going to skip this one and come back to this. Okay. So one of your values as a CEO is your ability to predict the future. This is what helps you predict that future really clearly. And the more time and energy you put into building a forecast, the better you can predict the future of your business. Obviously, things still go sideways. There's data that you don't have. There's things that you don't know. The environment changes, but if the environment holds relatively stable, and you've been running your business for any amount of time, and you really work on building a forecast, most of the time you have a pretty good idea about what's coming. All right, let's take a look at the parts. I'm going to start off by just doing the simple agency forecast, because this is like the easiest set of models. Then I'm going to go into VC. Then I'm going to go into this private equity forecast, FP&A private equity forecast. Okay, simple forecast. In the at the very top level, we've got a summary that's going to cover your revenues, cost of goods sold, gross profit, operating costs, OpEx, EBITDA. If you have adjusted EBITDA, we go in here as well. Cash in, cash out, and then total operating cash flow. And then in this case, we had we're being reimbursed on something, so don't worry about this piece. I put together a little graph for you here, which I'm going to go into a little bit more. Let me make this a little smaller so that you can see it. There you go. I put together a little graph for you here that shows the different cases, so you can see, like, if we have different revenue assumptions, what do those revenue assumptions show? And I'll get into that in just a minute. Okay. All right. Next, the costs. So once again, tiny little business. We're just looking at full-time salaries, contractors, and then all the services and software that you might use, sales and marketing services you might use, and total cost of sale, total cost sales marketing, total costs. So does everybody pretty well understand this as far as like it's, you know, like you've got these people, these other contractors, here's their bonus percent, their bonus amount. Where's my, I'm missing something in here. That's not right. That's not the bonus amount. That's the bonus amount. This should say payroll. Sorry about that. Didn't catch that. Yeah. Is that right? Hold on. What am I missing? I'm missing the dollar amount. Oh, I know why. Because I didn't do it that way. Sorry. And we got Michelle in there. Okay. Okay, that is correct. The dollars are just put in here. That's why. So most of the time, we're going to actually have it broken down where we have a column here that actually shows the amounts over here. I'm going to show you guys that in just a minute. But overall, we've got cost of people, cost of services, like, you know, for an agency, you got like Ahrefs, Atlassian, etc. And that gives us our total services and software. And then we got sales and marketing stuff, and then just total costs. Any question on that? Really straightforward. Perfect. All right. And then the revenue piece. So this piece, the way that this piece is broken up, you've really got three things that you can do in a business. You can add more customers, you can increase the amount of money per customer, and you can cut the amount of the churn, the time, how many of them are leaving you. So you can hold on to them longer, you can make them worth more money, or you can add more of them, which is kind of the same as churn as well. But that's, so when you take a look at this, you can see we've got our churn rate, and this is for our retainer customers at an agency. So you got a churn rate, 20%. And by the way, there are other ways of doing this. You can do, when you're doing an agency model, you can do something where you say like, oh, I'm a project-based agency, not a retainer-based agency. If you're a project-based agency, you might say like the average customer stays with us for X amount of time. Let's say 6 months to do the project, and the average amount of time is blah amount. You know, the average amount of money is blah amount, and then you would just say like this customer stays on for X amount of time. And so your churn rate would be a little bit different because you know that they're churning after that amount of time. So maybe you're still going to try to keep them for longer, but it's not the same as a retainer churn rate where customers are just kind of leaving. You don't really want them to leave. You can keep servicing them if you want it. All right. Any questions right now? I'm about to go into the math on this. All good?
Yeah, so
Yep.
would you also put like inputs in this forecast? So let's say for an agency, you have 50 leads. Out of those 50 leads, you have 25 appointments, and then you close 10 customers, and this is the average deal size. Would you also put that in here to make it, you know, actually understand where these numbers come from?
A great question. So I was going to kind of skip over it a little bit, but what I did is I took a look at all the clients that ended. I took a look at all my non-recurring clients when I was building this. I took a look at all of my recurring clients. And then based off of all of that data, I put together some numbers that's like my average monthly value of recurring clients, my average value of clients per year, average value of the clients per month, et cetera, et cetera. So I took all the math from all my existing clients, and I put together assumptions about the clients based on that. And then when I came down here, I said, okay, well, the average price per customer is five grand. So the average monthly price per retainer customer is $5,000. The churn rate on those retainer customers is actually a little bit less than 20%, but I put in 20% because I was looking to be really conservative, and I was also wanted just to give you guys round numbers. So the ones here that are in yellow and the ones here that are in yellow, these are the places where I'm changing things. So anytime that it's in yellow here, that's that's an area that I'm editing. The areas that are not in yellow are generally I'm not editing. Although when you're building a model, you can go in and change whatever you want. If, for example, I know that as of June 24, I'm going to run a set of forecasting webinars, and I'm going to bring on more retainer clients. I could go in and I could either create a new row that says, you know, as of this month, change this thing, and then I could add it. I can make a modification to this formula right here, and then run it forward, or I could add another variable underneath at that point, and maybe add an additional variable that says we're going to increase by X% for this particular product line. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Clear.
So
Thank you.
I've had a number of people ask me, like, isn't there a good system, like a software system that will do this? And the answer is always Excel or Google Sheets, because there's so much variability. There's so many things that you can do that I've never seen it done in a software system well. Like, just to have the absolute control that you have in something like Excel or Google Sheets. Okay, so you got a churn rate. Churn rate decrease. We knew that the churn rate was probably going to decrease over time. In this case, I put it just to 0%. But if I was to say like 6%, 5%, you can see it actually change here over time right there. So it's going to decrease. I think it actually decreases 5% per month in this particular example. So I like to have things like that where I know, like, oh, this thing is going to decrease. Here's the change over time. And then we've got the average price per customer, the growth rate per customer, so 3%. So we know that our growth on this is going to be 3% per month over the course of the year. And then beginning customers, which there were 0. And then we can see here, this one is going to equal the new customer here. Now, this new customers in this period here is being driven by these cases. So cases management, we got base case management, case growth case. So in this particular case, the cases management, and it's these numbers here that we're expecting to have. So this 1, 1, 1, 2, 2, 1. And what that's driving is this new customers this period. Does it make sense? Right. All right, cool. If it doesn't make sense, let me know and I'll answer the questions for you.
Sure.
So the reason
I got a question.
Yep.
Why is this like ones and zeros? Why isn't it just like 1 new customer every month or 2 new customers every month? Why is it scattered like this?
Because this is essentially like a new product line for this particular business. This is something the business was transitioning to, away from the way that it used to do things. And so they gave plenty of time in the beginning to start generating new customers. And if you take a look, you can see on the base case, they have a total of, what was that, like 1, 2, 3 customers throughout the year. So really, really meager returns on this. Like what is the bare minimum we feel like we can absolutely do on this was that base case. You can, and then on the management case, we said, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 customers throughout the year. Okay, more. And then on the growth case, you got quite a bit more, quite a few more than that. So that was why those 3 were set the way they were. In this particular instance, and this has to do with building cases, the rest of everything in here was based off of these numbers, because we've got a few different product and service lines here. We've got these retainer customers, website and application customers, hosting customers, website support customers, and that's it. But the way this business was changing, they said that they want to go towards these retainer customers, which were going to drive the website customers, the hosting customers, the website support customers, etc. Something else to know in here is that this particular model, the way it's built, it only has new customers. In a lot of cases, you would put all the existing customers in there as well. Like in a better case scenario, you'd put all existing customers, which I'll show you in a more advanced model in just a minute. But in this particular one, they just put new customers in because they wanted to see, like, what does the growth look like for that? And then they could take all of the existing customers, which they had in the numbers above, which we were looking at up here. They have all the existing revenue up here. So they didn't want to go back through and like change every single thing for the entire system to be built around just this one piece. So they built the new revenue piece, and they just left old revenue up top. Does that make sense to everybody? Cool. All right. Excellent. All right. So the other thing in here is that in order to figure out what this model looks like, we were trying to figure out, we were trying to drive everything based on on one or two variables. And this is really, really important. When you're looking at building a model, it can get really complicated really quickly, like really, really, really quickly. And what you realize is that for your revenue growth piece, the fewer variables you have to drive revenue, the better as far as the model is concerned. If you can take your model down to 2 or 3 or 4 major initiatives that you're going to be doing or major things that you're going to be doing, it's so helpful for building this model. And so in this particular case, what we did is we said everything is is based on these retainer customers. And then we're going to grow everything based on a percentage of these. So I think like this one, let me find where this formula is done. Yeah, so we said we're 33% of these customers, of these top level customers, are going to turn into these customers here. So if we say we have one new customer here in this one, that means that we're going to have this 33% one here. Now the yellow one here, this RGRD law, so the yellow one is one that they knew they were going to have that was independent of everything else. And they could have added it here, or they could have added it up here in the old revenue area. And they could just kind of put it in and be like, we know we have this one coming in. In this particular case, they just put it in here because that's how we were playing with those numbers there. So the reason this is important is because this way I can come in and I can change this case. Let me go over here and change the case for you. I can say like, change this to the growth case. And when I come in and I look at the revenue, we can see now these numbers start going up faster because these numbers here are going up faster. So we're saying like everything is built on this retainer building more retainer customers, and that's what drives the growth of these website customers, these hosting customers, and these support customers. Now, obviously, you might have multiple product lines and multiple sales teams and multiple other things, in which case you're going to have more metrics and more things that are driving things, driving the growth in different areas. But for a simple model, the easier way is to take it down to as few variables as possible. Does it make sense? Any questions? All good? I'm going to look at everybody's faces. All right. RJ, how do you feel like I'm doing so far?
You're making me have to take myself off mute. You're doing great. I'm loving it.
Perfect. All right.
You're doing it better than I can do it. That's why I'm watching you.
I appreciate that. RJ's done a ton of these, and so I want to make sure that I'm meeting his standards. All right. So that's how this one was built. That everything was built off of this one because this service line is what's driving everything else. Let's go take a look now at how when we change those numbers from our base case all the way up to our growth case, we see massive differences just based on this revenue model here, just based on these numbers here changing. So, and you can see here's my 3 different cases. I don't remember the formulas for how I got those cases to change. I did build in, I built them based on the growth here. Oh, we got Neil. All right, what's up, Neil? There's somebody rose there. Yeah. Neil, sorry, not Niels. Yeah, go for it.
Does your growth numbers impact the cost expense numbers?
Great question. I was just about to say that. So over here, the yellow ones here are my additional costs as well. So what I did is I said when I have this additional growth, I'm going to build in having this additional salesperson and their commission. I'm going to build in these different bonus amounts for the team based on making these numbers. And I'm going to build in these additional consultants here. And so what I did is I just I said that, you know, if this is set to base, add this guy here. If this is set to or take him off or something like that. Let me see, base forecast 3,000. I don't remember how, like I said, I don't remember how I did all the math, but the short answer is yes, absolutely. Let me see if he actually puts him back in here. Yeah, there you go. So it takes him to 0. So if he's on the base case, I took all this stuff to 0. So I said no salesperson, no commission, and then if we only hit the base case, then there's no bonus either. So you can see here, I have the notes in here as to how I did it. Growth case, full payout, management case, half payout, base case, no bonuses. So we remove the bonuses if they don't hit at least the management case. And we take out the salesperson and we take out those consultants as well. I think I also added some other money in here somewhere. Where'd I put it? Maybe some advertising dollars. I think I actually took it. I just added it in one way or the other. But this was something where I was considering saying, like, if we were at the base case by this point, don't put in the additional advertising spend, because we need to conserve those numbers. And you can actually see, let's take a look here. When we take a look at our, I guess you can't really see it, because you would see actually a drop in our cash after December, because we would pay off a lot of the we pay out those bonuses, and that would be like $30,000 in bonuses. And so we probably see that drop paying out all those bonuses at the end of the year, but it doesn't, for whatever reason, it doesn't go up to December over here, whereas the others do. All right. Questions on the agency simple forecast before I move on to a VC forecast?
Yeah, I got one more question. So the costs that are really big, like annual expenses, let's say like 10K, you pay it in January. Do you forecast that out monthly, like break down monthly? And similar to what you said about the bonuses happen at the end of the year, do you kind of backdate that expectation, or?
So when you say the expectation, do you mean the expectation for the team, or do you mean the expectation as far as financial management?
Let's say the contractors, employees are racking up bonuses every month, but you don't pay that out until the end of the year.
Great
You
question.
might not get a.
You would accrue
Yeah.
those bonuses. So you would basically store that money away every month, and you can see it in our cash line right here, this green line right here. So we're building up cash every single month. Our cash is just going up and up and up in this. Let me do the management case. It's a little more realistic. So our cash starts going up a lot faster around November. And I think, let me see, here's my revenue. Yeah, so the cash number starts going up. So this is a great question, is that if you don't have a forecast and you're promising bonuses and you're not tracking how much money you need to have for that, and you don't know where you're going to land as far as these things are concerned, you might have a really hard time paying out bonuses. So for example, in this one, our cash drops all the way down to $25,000 here. And then it starts going up in this particular case. Now, we would be banking on this thing going up in order to pay those bonuses, and I still have some cash left over. However, there's still enough cash for the management case bonuses, even at this $25,000. There's still enough money in there. So it's something that was accounted for, but really we'd be banking on this big growth at the end of the year. If they hit those numbers, which the bonuses are based on hitting those revenue numbers and hitting those expense numbers, we would have that much money. Now, in a larger business, you would accrue that money, and you would basically just every month you would take a certain amount of money out and just in the on the books and say, like, this is money that's going to go toward bonuses at the end of the year. So this is a great example of how you do things in a big business versus a small business. And also, like in a big business, $30,000. I mean, let's take a look at this. Sorry, my cost number here. $30,000 is the amount that you might pay like a director on a bonus, or maybe a C-suite on a bonus, depending on the size of the business. 30 grand is not that much money. Whereas, in a small business like this, 30 grand is a lot of money. Any other questions on that? Cool. All right, let's take a look now at our VC forecast. Now, this one is going to be a SaaS business. And this is something that JH Media Group does. We help SaaS businesses put these kinds of forecasts together prior to building anything for them. So a lot of times people come to us and they're like, "Oh, don't build this big giant new SaaS." And we're like, "Yeah, you gotta plan that thing out." And they're like, "What?" And we're like, Yeah, that's why you got to plan it out. Because if you're asking me what it is, you don't know what you're doing. So, all right. So this one is going to look really, really similar. Once again, pro forma P&L, revenues, cost of goods sold, gross profit, operating costs, EBITDA, total cash flow, ending bank balance. Now, here's the deal. This is a VC one. This is something where we're putting $5 million into this thing. And then we can, and by the way, I've kind of played with numbers over time. I think I broke it a little. I didn't break it, but like the numbers don't actually make perfect sense at this point. But you're going to see the cash flow negative for a while before it starts becoming positive, because we put a bunch of money into the business to start it, because it's a SaaS business and it always takes a ton of money to start SaaS businesses, or at least reasonable size ones. And it just, and you don't really start going positive until some point in the future. And you can actually see here, this is the kind of thing that I was saying about being able to see problems before they happen. So here, we got a negative 69, we got positive 54. But if you don't have a forecast like this, you don't really know what these numbers are going to look like. And you, like, if you're just winging it, you might not see this negative 18,000 right here. And then you get up to there and you're like, oh no, we need another 18 grand just to be positive. What are we going to do? Or worse yet, you get this negative 266 at the end of the year. You got a great year, and that just ruins everybody's Christmas right there. And then positive from then on. All right. Let's take a look at costs here, because I like the way I did it here better than the way I did on the other one. So on this one, we've got our start dates here. Something we don't have in this one, which I like to have, is, by the way, is end dates as well. So on a VC deal, a lot of times you're just looking at who's starting when, and maybe it's gonna, you don't really know who you're gonna fire when you're first getting started. But in bigger businesses, people have expiration dates, and so a lot of times I like to have an end date in there as well. Although you got to be careful about making sure that those end dates are hidden. You don't want everybody seeing those. So, so you got your start dates here. You've got your base salary, and then your bonus percentages here. And this is what I was confusing before. I was like, what do I do with that base salary? I usually have the salary just listed down the side. So anyway, you just put in the salary here. Let's actually say we're going to pay this founder and CEO, instead of 90, we're going to pay him 120. Is that right? 120. There we go. Then there it goes. It just pops the whole thing up, and you can see how that affects the entire everything in the model all the way throughout the rest of the future. So, and then you can see here the zeros. This is if you're not starting them until a future date. So this business analyst doesn't start until May of 2025. And sorry, whoops, this one. And so they're just zeros all the way out until we get to that point. So this helps you plan out, like, who am I going to need? What are they going to do? Et cetera, et cetera. And you can kind of think about your headcount planning to some extent through here. Now, this one also has a sales team hiring plan. So in this particular case, we're looking at how much revenue do we need to have before we hire a new account executive? In this case, I put 150K. But if I was to say like 250K, it's going to cut down. There it is. Cut down the number of people we hire over time. We also, in this particular case, we give them a ramp-up time, and you can actually see it built in here. And then what is their the quota ramp-up? So how much money are they going to be generating over X amount of time? And then we've also got sales support staff. So first sales director at 4 account executives, maximum number of account executives per sales directors is 7. AEs per SDR, and then first SDR at 4 first director, SDR director at 4 SDRs, and then maximum number of SDRs per director. So this, when you put these kinds of things in, you can see how it fills in all of your potential hires off of something like this. This is generally something that's really nice to have for a VC if they're looking for, like, oh, you're going to raise money. How many people are you going to need? How are you planning that out? What is, tell me all the plans behind everything. You would want something like this. For the most part, though, on a lot of small businesses getting started, especially if you're bootstrapping, you could just put the people in. If you know who you're going to need for the first 2 years, you could just add them right in here. Like, you don't necessarily need the full headcount planner. Now it gets really, really, really helpful the bigger the business you have. So if you've got, I don't know, like 5,000 people, you're going to need some formula to figure out who you're going to hire and when you're going to hire them and how much they're going to cost and what's the total impact of the business, et cetera, et cetera. So building those headcount planners can be really valuable. But if you're starting with five to 10 people, you can just build them straight into this area, straight into here. You don't necessarily need to have everything else. All right. Any questions about this piece? I'm about to do another part of the costs page in just a second, but any questions about people so far?
Yeah, Jason, real quick, on the salary, like for the CEO, is there other costs involved? It looks like that'd be like 10 grand a month times 35%. Is that 16.2?
Yeah, 16.2 is
there-
probably with the bonus and payroll and taxes.
Okay, gotcha. So you're considering the other costs involved with not just salary.
Exactly. Yeah. So if we take a look, you've got the start date, the base salary, the bonus percentage, and then payroll taxes and benefits. One of the reasons I like to hire more overseas people, we have no benefits on them.
So because this is a VC like model, you're not considering cash flow, so everything's done on accrual basis, yeah?
Yeah, everything. Actually, hold on. I think this is this one on a cash basis? Give me a second. Amortization. EBIT. Yeah, I don't think it's amortized. You know, it's a great question. I don't actually know how I set it up. So I do remember that we're looking at EBIT, not EBITDA. So if it's, let me think about the question. I'm sure there's somebody that knows the answer.
I think it's doing what you need to anyway, just for understanding like the cash position on a month-to-month basis. But it might, if you're accruing, for example, those benefits on a monthly basis for the CEO, then you're building some conservatism into the model, right?
Exactly. Yep. All right. Great question. Thank you, Dominic. And I'm sorry I didn't have the answer right off the top of my head for that. All right. Let me just come down here. Okay, so now here's the other part of the stuff that I like. The way they did this, I thought was really smart. So what they did is they calculated the rest of the business on as a percentage of your people costs. So they just said travel costs per G&A employee, travel costs. So basically travel costs for different employee types, other costs. And what they did here with the other costs is they just said like any SaaS system that you're going to need per person, per different role kind of gets grouped into here. $250 a month, $1,000 a month, whatever the thing is. If you know that all of your sales and marketing or your salespeople have HubSpot and they have like the higher cost HubSpot plan, you would build that into this particular cost. If you know that all of your R&D people your developers are gonna be using Jira, you would build that into that cost. In a lot of cases, what I do is I actually build in, this is something not, this is a piece that I didn't directly build into the rest of it, but I put it together just so you can get a feel for it. So I put this together just like general operating costs, initial capital needs, like some other pieces in there. LinkedIn, Sales Navigator, blah, blah, things like that. So I just put together some basic infrastructure costs so that when when I was putting together costs on this, I could figure out like how much would each one of these different things actually cost. And that's how they do it in here. You would still need that backup document that's like, here's the different roles and here's the different things that they're going to have. And I always put a little bit of padding in there as well, so you know what that would look like. You've also got onboarding costs, and then you've got payment processing and infrastructure as a percentage of MRR. So as a SaaS business, very often one of your largest costs, other than people, is your hosting cost. And so what we did here is we just did infrastructure as a percentage of MRR, and just saying that infrastructure cost, any other SaaS systems that run the business holistically, and that hosting falls into the 7% of MRR. So he's built it in as a group. And then on the back end of that, in that infrastructure cost area, we'd actually do the math to make sure it actually ends up about there. So we kind of back into that number by by figuring out how much things are actually going to cost and just build it in as a percentage of MRR. Make sense? And this is actually really important because the one thing I forgot to mention before, it's a model. It's not reality. It's going to be close, but it's a model. It's a mathematical model. Like when your board is asking you, why are we off by 3% on this and 1% of that, which they rarely do because there's such small numbers, it doesn't matter. A lot of times you can just be like, it's just a model, man. Like, it's pretty close. Now, if you're off by 30 or 40% on something, they're going to have something to say about that. But, for the most part, it should mostly kind of resemble reality, but definitely not perfectly. A great example of that is in revenues. In a lot of cases, you're going to see like a bump in revenues due to something that happened, but you ran a campaign. Maybe you planned the campaign out, and maybe you said like month 3, we're going to do this campaign. But most of the time, you're going to say, running these 3 campaigns over the course of X amount of time, we expect to see this much growth. So we're going to show that growth linearly within the model. You can get really fancy and actually build it in one piece at a time, which sometimes is really valuable. But a lot of times it depends on what your needs are in there. A lot of times I just build it in linearly across that amount of time. Does that make sense as far as what I'm saying about the model and kind of like it doesn't always match reality? Great. Okay, cool. So once we add up all of our people, once we add up all of these other costs related to them, onboarding costs, infrastructure costs, we've got our total cash out. When we look at our revenues, this is where it gets more complicated in this particular model. So this one, you're looking at things like, let me make it a little bit bigger for you guys. There we go. Signups at the beginning of month 1. New signups month 0, organic signups. So this is looking at lead generation. This is looking at organic signups. So that's SEO. That's like, marketing spend. So we're saying like really like it's being driven by by some buzz that you built up front in this particular case, and then by marketing spend. And so when you're looking at this kind of thing, you start to realize like, oh, you know what? I could build in all the pieces I'm doing. Like I spend X number of dollars on SEO. How many leads should that be generating? And actually, we're going to talk about this in just a minute. Oh, did I have a message I missed? Always over accrue. All right. Thank you. Sorry. I just saw your message, RJ. All right. So what you can do is you can build in how you're getting your signups, how you're getting your lead generation built into this, which is super, super important, especially when you start off, because you need to know how much money does it cost to generate those leads, and you need to figure out what is your cost of acquisition. The general rule in SaaS and actually in business in general is you got to have a lifetime value, a 3-to-1 lifetime value to cost of acquisition ratio in order for a business to operate and to be able to grow. So in a lot of SaaS businesses, we're looking at like 11-to-1 in some cases. So we're still, but you still got to make sure you understand what that cost of acquisition to LTV is. And when I was talking about more complex models and unit economics, those are the kinds of things that we show in those unit economics areas. Okay, so this is showing signups. Signups drive to the basic plan right here. And you can see like beginning customers being in month 1, conversion rates for all older signups, et cetera, conversion rates per month, change per month, average revenue per account, first month increase, et cetera. You remember in the last one, we looked at somebody, I think it was Niels, asked like, what's your revenue per month? And I said, we've got this, it was $5,000 on the simple agency model, $5,000 per month. And then I had that percentage increase. Same exact thing here. We've got this ARPA, average revenue per account increased per month 0.5%. They actually did the math way better in this one than I did it in the previous one. Mine was much jankier math. Okay. And then, so we've got the different plans. Here you got basic plan, pro plan, and then there's the enterprise plan down here. And then you can see on the enterprise plan, we put together a whole bunch of other metrics in here because enterprise plans just sell differently. For the most part, when you're selling at the enterprise level, you're selling on value. So You just, somebody comes in and says like, let's say you normally sell something that's like $50 a month, and AT&T comes to you and they're like, I want to do this for like 100,000 people. You're like, all right, cool. What price would you like to pay for that? Like your pricing just kind of goes out the door. Like, you wouldn't actually ask them what they want to pay, but your standard pricing would just go out the door, and you'd figure out a price that works for them. And so that's why when you do these enterprise plans, you do it a bit differently. So if you look at this model after the fact, you're like, why is that done? That's why it's done like that. All right. So once we add up all the numbers for our basic plan, our pro plan, our enterprise plan, we put everything together, then we basically just have all of our cash in right here. And you can actually see it: basic, pro, enterprise, enterprise renewals, and then total cash generated. Any questions on that? Cool. I'm going to get into how churn works in this in just a minute, a little bit deeper, because I got another example where I can really dig into that piece. Okay, so once you add in all your sales, all your costs, all your infrastructure costs, you put them together with your revenues, you end up with the summary. Looks like this, and you can see how it all grows. And the really important thing here is that you have all these assumptions. You build all these assumptions out at the beginning. You're like, I think I'm going to do this. I think I'm going to do this. I think I'm going to do this. The thing that's so valuable about this is that as a CEO, you have to have a feedback mechanism. When somebody says like, oh, hey, boss, I want to do blah marketing thing. And you come back and you're like, okay, marketing director, how much is that going to cost? How many leads are we going to get from it? What's the conversion rate on those leads? Give me those numbers. I'm going to plug them into my model here, and you're going to see what the impact of that thing is going to be. Because at the end of the day, you might have like marketing guy 1, marketing guy 2, marketing guy 3, all have great ideas. Sales guy 1, sales guy 2, they have great ideas. You might have other people, customer success might have some great ideas, and you need to weigh all of these great ideas against each other and say like, okay, well, what if we do the sales side? We only have X amount of resources. If we're just going to do sales, what is that? What that sales, the thing that's, oh shit. Oops. What did I do? There we go. Sorry, I put my elbow down on my keyboard. If we do what the sales guy wants to do, what's it going to look like? If we do what the marketing guy wants to do, what's it going to look like, etc. And when you build out assumptions like this, and you have somebody that can help you build them out further, you can build in what those look like and see which thing actually produces more money and which thing has the highest chance of working. All good? Feeling good about this? Doing good? Okay, cool. Are we at time? Yeah? Okay. I can keep going. I have so much more. I have so much more. So if y'all want to stick around, stick around. If you don't want to stick around, let me see if I had anything at the end of this to like really, that was super important. You already got all the slides, you got all the stuff. So I was going to go through this assumptions narrative, like how to do an assumptions narrative to like help somebody build all this stuff out. But I want to make sure you guys understood how it worked first. So I'm going to put it towards, actually, I tell you what, does anybody have to go right now? Oh man. Okay. Look forward to my next webinar on building assumptions narratives. And I'll tell you what, RJ, Stephen, I will send you guys the presentation. I'll send you the recording, and you can watch the last part. Also, I'll get it transcribed as well, so you can read all my ums and ahs as well.
Hey everybody, I got a bump. Jason and I are kind of informal mutual coaches of each other. I enjoyed this. One of the reasons I love watching Jason is he just teaches this stuff really well. As Jason noted, I've been doing this a long time. I've done a bazillion financial models with professional CFOs, and he just teaches it really well. So it's great stuff. Nice job, Jason.
Thank you so much, RJ. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for letting me come. Thanks.
Yep.
Bye.
See ya. All right. I'll tell you what. So I'm going to take a look at this FP&A model real quick. What else do we have on here? Let me see who we got left. We got a lot of people still here. All right, Neil, Rick. All right, Neil, Rick, y'all still good?
Sorry,
Y'all
what-
still good? Yeah. What's
So I
up?
was going to say, while we're on the VC SaaS forecast, I mean, part of the benefit of that model is basically trying to decide if the business idea has legs and deciding if the amount of funding proposed is like suitable to get the business to break even, right? So I'm asking you this as like from a subject matter like expertise perspective in the SaaS field. Basically, when you're deciding on your assumptions for the business, like, oh, we think this product should attract this many customers at this price point. Essentially, like, I'm sure you've seen massive overshoots in either direction in that process.
Yes.
But do you have any tips or tricks to get more accurate, other than I've just got so many war stories, I've just seen it so many times that I have a good gut feel for where this product sits in the market, what the product market fit is like, and therefore like the revenue potential.
Yeah, it's just experience. And this is, I tell people this so often, that it's just doing it over and over and over again. So the thing that I would tell people is get a great mentor, or get a great coach who's done this over and over and over, because you just don't know what you don't know. At JHMG, this is what we do: is we help new SaaS entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs get their SaaS offering started. And so often, like, people come into us and they talk to us and they just have no idea. They don't know what they don't know because they've just never done this before. And so there's questions about, like, how much should I pay people? And, like, somebody was saying, oh yeah, like, I've got this dev, we're going to pay him 200,000 a year. And I was like, how about no? How about we can get somebody in Eastern Europe that has the same skill set and we can pay him 50K per year? Like, it's things like that. You just don't know what you don't know. And so it's experience. Answer your question? Cool. All right. Let me see how we're doing on people. All right. Cool. We had a couple people have to drop. Let's see. Neil, you doing good?
Yeah, man, I'm good. I can stick around.
All right, perfect. I'll tell you what, I'm just going to show this other forecast real quick, and then I'm going to jump to the assumptions narrative, because that's really what I probably I wanted to start with, but I couldn't before I actually showed how this stuff worked. All right, so this is a much more complex FP&A model. So this is a model that was originally built by the guys at Concero, and then modified pretty extensively by my team. So this model here, let's see, revenue. This model, you can see the cases again: budget, management, stretch case, investment case. It gets way more complicated. But the thing that I want to show here is that the basics of, close this, the basics of how it works, when you've got new customers. This has modules, but in this case, it's customers. New customers, a churn percent, average price per facility, beginning modules, new modules, less the churn. That's the basics of how it works. That's all. Like, when you're thinking about the numbers, you're always looking at how many customers, how much are they paying, how long are they sticking around. Like, those are the three variables that that you can pull levers on to change. Now you can run marketing campaigns to bring in new ones. You can run customer success campaigns to keep them longer. You can hire great people to keep them longer. You can implement systems to keep them longer. There's so many things, but at the end of the day, you're only affecting those three things. Now you can also raise capital, which can kind of give you money to do these things, but still, at the end of the day, these are the variables that you have to work with. Anybody have questions about that? This was something that, like, when I started building models, I was like, that's it. That's all you got. Cool. All right. So the way that this model is built, you can see we've got the churn. We have a changing churn rate over time. In this case, it doesn't change, but we can say in 23, it's going to be 2%. 24, I could say 1%, 0.5%, whatever these churn rate changes are over time. Price per module, price per module changes. Price per customer, you can say, is changing on a yearly basis. And then these calculate out, your new, your sales systems calculate your new, and your churn calculates your churn, and then you end up with your total number at the price that they're at, and that's what gives you your dollar amounts. I want to make sure I hammer on this piece, because at the end of the day, like, that's all you really got. There's other variables you can add into it, like you can do it on a monthly basis. You churn on a monthly basis. You can add some, maybe some upsells. You got to add other things into it, but end of the day, each product line still ends up with these items. Okay. In this one, we also build in cash flow statements, balance sheets, department P&L, category P&Ls. This was the unit economics area that I was talking about, like bookings, ACV, TCV, paying customers, was what I'm looking for, MRR, churn rates, LTV to CAC ratio, et cetera, et cetera. So you can build all this stuff out. It just takes a lot of manpower to do this stuff. And until your business is running at 5 to 10 million per year, it's just not worth, in my opinion, like, unless you just love this stuff. I just don't think it's worth going through and putting all the effort it takes to build all this stuff out. Because when you look at it, if you look at the, you have to look at every single product line, how you're doing on them. You have these, actually, this has actually been diminished pretty substantially from a much bigger MRR calculation area, where you're looking at every single thing, every single customer. This is a forecast that's really built very heavily on reality. So, it just takes, if you want to have something really complicated, you can. It just takes a lot of time. All right. That said, let's jump over to building the assumptions narrative. Any questions on that FP&A private equity forecast before we move on? Cool. All right. We didn't talk about incentivizing, but I think that we're going to skip it for now, just for time. All right. Assumptions narratives. This is the most simple assumptions narrative I could put together, that I put together that I can show you guys. This was for building the Ascendance business. So what we said is, customers pay $5K per month. We eventually want to raise them to $10K per month. And we said we're going to change it after 6 months, which ended up not being possible. We said we have additional service offerings of, we can do yearly planning, which is spending a week with the customer, and that's $20K. Quarterly planning, which is 2 days, and that's $10K. Our churn rate is, we're going to be at 75% over 1 year, because most customers churn within 1 year, but it's actually come down quite a bit recently. So we're actually going to change that up. Ongoing churn rates, to be closer to 50% after 1 year. 10% of customers stay 3+ years. And then we've got our LTV, which was an estimated guess, which is actually a bit higher than that. And then our cost of acquisition, which was a wild guess at 3K, and it's a little bit lower than that. And this is after having run the business for a little while. I'm able to give you real numbers. But we actually noted in there, we were like, I think it's just a wild guess, an estimated guess. This is just a wild guess. We were like, maybe it's going to be something like that. And, based on some, we were like, well, if we're going to run ads, if we're going to do trade shows, if we're going to do blah, 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 this is kind of what I think it's going to end up at. Very often what you would do on this cost of acquisition is you actually run the math behind it. This was one of the first one that I wrote on this. Then this was before I didn't want to stop and run the math. I wanted to get all the data out of my head. So I just said it's a wild guess. And then coming back on this, what I did is I was like, how much do the ads cost? How much do the speaking engagement cost? How much blah, blah, blah? How many leads do I think I'll generate? And then I can come back to what I think cost of acquisition is going to be based on that and more data. Revenue drivers. So when I was writing this out, I was like, the amount of quality content, the more quality content we put out, the more leads that we're generating, because we were just putting stuff out on LinkedIn and on out for SEO, and we were realizing that one piece of content was costing us $200, and then 1 lead for every 5 pieces of quality content we put together. We probably needed to add in something that's like over X amount of time, but it was this was a good place to get started. And then number of views on videos on LinkedIn, we have 1 lead for every 3,000 views. And then we got 3,000 views for every 5 pieces of content, and 1 piece of content costs us $100. So for every $500, we end up with 1 lead. So you can see I'm kind of backing into this cost of acquisition piece as I went through here. And then we said social media, signups to newsletter, and speaking events. These are the ways that at Ascendance, we were generating leads. And then all we have to do is just figure out what's that close rate, and then we can have a good idea on what the growth of the business looks like. So, and then here you go. Jason's doing the sales calls, 25% sales close rate. Not too bad. All right, and then the costs. So here's the deal with this, is that in this one, we had some special notes. Jeff is my business partner at Ascendance. We both wanted 4 clients for each one of us. Because if we did 4 and we said, we just take the money for those 4 and we could do all 4 of those in 1 day per week, that he and I are both well taken care of financially, and then we can just run the business after that. So when we were building this out, we were like, what do we need to get to feel really good about the business? And keeping in mind, this is like a tiny business, but at a pretty high profit margin. Like we were essentially getting paid $1,000 an hour to do this. So, it works out pretty well. And then we put together some ideas on people costs, software costs, other software, and then what does it take to get us to our first million? I wrote all of that out here. What does our first year labor look like, second year and beyond? This is a super, super, super basic assumptions narrative. When you write out all of these things, you can basically say, like, this is what I see the business looking like, and you can give this to a model builder, and that model builder can then build that into the models that we talked about. Make sense so far? Any questions about this stuff? Nope. Cool. All right. So you can see, like, from all the stuff that we talked about, how they need to know, like, what's the price, what's the churn rate, what's the LTV on things, like, how long are they going to be there, like all of those numbers that we had plugged into those assumptions earlier. When I was writing out this business, this is how I just put it out. It just like flowed right out of my head, just like, this is what I think, this is what I think, this is what I think, and then this is basically where it gets me to. Now, if you want to do something that's more complex than that, I actually put together this for you guys. This is my forecast assumptions narrative worksheet. And this is where I realized that I knew a lot more than I thought I did. And I started writing things out, and I realized it's actually really hard to do this for everybody in one of these documents. And the reason is because the first question was like, what's the value metric? Like if you're charging based on usage of the, like the way Ahrefs charges based on the number of times you're accessing the system versus the number of users in the system, it dramatically changes how you build out all of your formulas. And it can get really complicated just in SaaS. And I know we got Ben here, who's more of a manufacturing guy. We haven't even talked about cost of goods sold, inventory, storage, warehousing, any of that stuff. So if you look at my my forecast assumptions here, I built it on a SaaS because that's the easiest way to do it. Ben, if you got ideas and if anybody has questions about how to do inventory, manufacturing related things or e-commerce related things, anybody's got those questions, ask them, because there's people on here that can answer them, and it's not me, unfortunately. But I gave you a good start to this stuff that kind of gives you an idea of how to go through and build these things. It's definitely not an end-all be-all, but it's a good start for you guys. And then the last thing that I was going to give you is this first million example. So this was my math I put together last night for you guys on how I came to this. Like when I was figuring out for a different business, for the Ramp business, what does the first million look like? In order to hit the first million in revenue at $4 per seat, with an average of 20 seats per account, the Ramp company formula looks something like this. I'm gonna make this bigger for you guys. All right, we want to hit $1 million in revenue divided by 12 months. That's 83,333 per month that we need to generate. Divide that by $4 per seat. We need to sell 20,000 seats, which is a lot. And then we said, well, the average customer is actually going to have 20 seats per account. So like when somebody signs up, we're not selling it to tiny businesses. We're selling it to slightly bigger businesses. So we're going to say an average of 20. So we need to sell 1,042 accounts to make our first million. So how do we get there? So we expect to raise 500K to start, and we're going to put 2/3 of that into sales. And then this is what the sales and marketing payroll is going to look like. I'm actually going to skip down to here because I realized last night as I was doing this that I really should have added in the 1/3 product side as well into my payroll because my payroll didn't make sense. So if you get this and you're like, Jason, your math doesn't add up, you're right. It does not add up. But what does add up is the math piece that I put together for you here. So what I did is I said our cost of acquisition is going to be $500 per person. We just said ad spend is going to cost $500 per person to bring in a new account. We're going to say, and you've got the number right here. So if I was going to change this and say it's going to take 800 or 1,000 or whatever, I just change it there. It's never going to get less than 350. And it's going to decrease by $13. I don't remember what the percentage was, some percentage per month, but it's going to decrease over time. Our yearly ad budget's $120,000. Our average revenue per account minimum is 100, maximum is 220 for our average customers. So CAC goes down over time. Ad spend stays the same over time. New customers changes because the CAC goes down. Before our churn rate, this is what it looks like. Then we add in our churn rate right here. Is the number of churned customers, total customers, average revenue, and then we end up with our total revenue down at the bottom. And I wanted to see the run rate because the run rate is going to tell me when I'm going to be at a run rate of $1 million, which is going to be in month 22. And that was how I got to my first million run rate, first million. If we want to look at actual collected first million, it was going to be at, I think I've got it down here somewhere. No, I didn't write it, but you would just do the math and add things up. Like how long does it take to get to 1 million? Just highlight these and add them up. But I want to know run rate 1 million, which is at month 22. Fortunately, when you look at these kinds of things, they grow really fast because by month 32, we're looking at a $3 million run rate with the same numbers. Now, obviously, things change over time. It's not going to be linear like this, but it gives you a good idea. So if you take that first million number, the first one here, and you just read through it, you can see how I actually figured all that stuff out. It talks about like, you know, I think it's going to cost this much money. It's going to be over this amount of time. Here's kind of the numbers in here. I wrote out the narrative for how this works. And then you would give it to a model builder and they would put together something like this in that revenue area for you. All right. I had one last thing for everybody. If anybody needs help building these, we've got Felipe on the call. Felipe is somebody that I've worked with to help build out these models. For them, anytime that he works on them, I look at them as well for right now. So that's that. If you need help with any of these things, or if you know anybody that needs help, just reach out to me and I'll get you in touch with Felipe. And any questions before we wrap up? How are you guys feeling? I didn't overload you too much, did I?
Not at all.
Not at all, really.
No, I'm kidding.
Okay.
That was a lot to cover, but yeah, much appreciated, Jason. I really like the assumptions narrative. That's kind of that was the part I was really after.
Perfect.
I've done some forecasting for manufacturing facilities, like 5-year projections, stuff like that. And so it looks like a lot of the principles are there. It just applies to different business models, require different assumptions and stuff like that. So But the assumptions are always just a huge black box where you can go so detailed and stuff like that. So
Just remember, it's a model, and it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be pretty good. And you know, there are things like, you know, like that decrease in churn rate over time, that increase, you know, ARPA over time. It's important to get certain things like that implemented, because you know that you're going to be improving your product for SaaS, improving your product. So your average revenue per account should be going up and your churn rate should be going down. And you can actually build in, like, as of this time, we're going to release X, Y, and Z features, and then we're going to drop by X amount at that time. If you really want to dig in and, like, if you just love the numbers, then, you know, you can do stuff like that. At the end of the day, though, what you really need to show is, what is your budget for the year? How much money are you going to be spending? Where are you going to get that money from? You know, things like that. All right, Dominic, what did you think, man? You're the only other enterprise, actually, maybe, I don't know, enterprise B2B SaaS person here. I know Michelle is as well.
Well, number one, I'm no longer an enterprise B2B SaaS operator on a daily basis anymore. So I started my career in transaction advisory. So I was buying and selling airports, and I was building like big valuation and operational models for airports and other like businesses in aviation. So what I found most useful from this was the templates for the VC SaaS and also the agency, because I've not, you know, these are not like, other than the B2B company, like I did the financial modeling at the company I just left, but it's always good seeing how other people do it. Like I've there's some tips and tricks I've seen in your model templates that I'm definitely gonna like adopt myself now.
Excellent, excellent. How did you feel like I explained it, since you have tremendously more experience on this than I do?
Yeah, no, it was good. Like,
Okay.
yeah, better than I could have done for sure.
Appreciate it. Appreciate it. And then Neil, I think you're the only other. Wait, and he's gone. Oh, there he is. Okay. Any other questions, Neil, before we wrap up?
No, I thought that was great. Thank you. Definitely be working on this week.
Excellent. Excellent. If you need any help, let me know. And how are things in Playa? You still down in Playa?
Yeah, we're here till August, then Canada for 3 weeks, then back here.
You say, where are you gonna be in Canada?
Not Montreal this summer, unfortunately. So just Ontario to visit family.
Gotcha.
But it's
I think
my girlfriend, she wanted to go back to Montreal because it's the best place to be this summer. So I'm glad you're going to experience that.
Wait, so you said you are in Montreal, or you're not gonna be in Montreal?
No, so last summer we were for 3 months.
Okay,
But
gotcha.
this summer she's back to Ontario.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I hear it's been raining a lot in Playa.
Yeah, it's cyclone season, apparently.
Yeah, yeah. All right, well, cool. If there aren't any other questions, then thank you guys so much. So glad you showed up. I appreciate you sticking around to the end. If you have any other questions, email me, let me know. And I'll send you all out the recording after it's done. I'll probably put it online so people can see. And yeah, thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it.
thanks for putting this together, Jason.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. See you guys. Have a good one.
Thank you, Jason.